What happens when God gives you supernatural strength? What would you be capable of doing? Tearing apart a lion with your bare hands, lifting city gates built to withstand enemy armies. That was the life of Samson, a man chosen by God and blessed with extraordinary strength. But when everyone believed it would take a mighty army to bring him down, his downfall came because of just one woman. In the small town of Zorah lived a married couple. For many years they carried the same heartache. They had no children. In those days, barrenness was seen as a source of shame, but God was about to turn their sorrow into a promise. That day, like so many others, Manoah's wife was walking alone. The wind moved through the fields. Everything seemed ordinary, until a presence broke the silence. Standing before her was the angel of the Lord. The woman stopped. She had never seen anyone like that man. His presence was unlike anything she had ever known. His voice carried peace and authority. Then he said, "You have never been able to have children, but soon you will give birth to a son. But that child would not be like the others. From the womb he would be set apart for God. No razor would ever touch his hair, because the Lord had chosen him to begin the deliverance of Israel from the hands of the Philistines." Without wasting a single moment, she ran to Manoah. Her voice still trembling, she told him everything that had happened. Manoah listened to every word. Then he lifted his eyes to heaven and offered a prayer. Manoah prayed, "Lord, I ask that the man return to us. Teach us how we should raise this child." God heard that prayer, and sometime later the angel of the Lord appeared once again. Once again Manoah's wife was alone, when suddenly the angel appeared again. Without hesitation she ran to bring her husband. This time Manoah would also see the messenger of God. When he arrived, Manoah asked, "Are you the man who spoke to my wife?" The angel replied, "I am." Then Manoah once again heard every instruction that God had prepared for that child. The angel said, "Your wife must not drink wine or any fermented drink. She must not eat anything unclean, for the child will be set apart for God from the womb until the day of his death." When the angel finished speaking, Manoah said, "Please allow us to prepare a young goat for the Lord." But the angel replied, "Even if you ask me to stay, I will not eat your food. If you wish to offer a burnt offering, offer it to the Most High God." At that moment Manoah still did not know he was standing before the angel of the Lord. Then he prepared the young goat and a grain offering. He placed everything upon a great stone and waited to see what God would do. Suddenly something extraordinary happened. Flames rose from the stone, and as the fire consumed the offering, the angel of the Lord ascended within the flames. Before their eyes he vanished. At that moment Manoah understood. They were not standing before an ordinary man. Overcome with fear, he said, "We will surely die, for we have seen the angel of the Lord." But his wife looked at him and replied, "If the Lord had wanted to kill us, he would never have accepted our offering, nor would he have revealed all these things to us." At that moment, fear gave way to hope. The months passed, and just as God had promised, that woman became pregnant. The hope that once seemed impossible was now growing within her. The day had finally come. The child was born. Manoah and his wife gave the boy the name Samson, and so the promise that began in a field now rested in his mother's arms. The years passed. The boy grew, and the Lord blessed him more with each passing day. Every day brought Samson closer to the purpose God had prepared for his life, and the Spirit of the Lord began to move upon him. Now, fully grown, Samson was different. There was something about him, a courage no one could explain. But at that moment, he still had no idea that God was about to reveal to the world the strength he had placed within him. One day Samson set out for the city of Timnah. The road led through vineyards and quiet valleys. Everything seemed peaceful until a roar echoed through the rocks. Before he could react, the fierce lion leaped to attack him. Samson had no sword. He had no spear, only his bare hands. At that moment, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. The lion kept roaring without stopping. Its claws tore through Samson's clothing, but he did not back down. With all his strength, he seized the beast, and before his very eyes, the impossible happened. In that moment, Samson defeated the lion alone, without a sword, without a spear, only with his bare hands. Then he continued on his journey as if nothing had ever happened. Sometime later, Samson returned along that same path. But there was something strange. Where once there had been a lion, there was now something unexpected. Inside the carcass of the lion there was a swarm of bees and plenty of honey. Samson gathered some with his hands. He ate as he walked, and without saying a word, he also shared it with his parents. It was in Timnah that everything changed. Samson saw a young Philistine woman, and in that moment he decided he wanted to marry her. But that choice would change the course of his entire life. When they heard their son's decision, Manoah and his wife became concerned. Then they asked, "Is there not a single woman among the people of Israel?" But Samson remained determined that she would become his wife. At that moment, neither Samson nor his parents knew, but God was using that decision, for the time had come to confront the Philistines, and this would be only the first spark. Sometime later, Samson went down once again to Timnah. This time he was not alone. Manoah and his mother went with him. The wedding was about to begin. As was the custom in those days, a great feast was prepared. For 7 days the men gathered to celebrate. Then Samson decided to present a challenge. Samson looked at everyone there. Then he said, "Out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet. If you can solve my riddle before the 7 days of the feast are over, I will give each of you a linen garment and a change of clothes. But if you cannot solve it, then each of you must give me a linen garment and a change of clothes." The hall fell silent. No one could solve the riddle. The days went by and no one could discover the answer. Then the 30 companions became worried because in those days those garments were extremely valuable, and out of fear they went to Samson's wife and said, "Find out the secret, or you and your father's house will die." Afraid, she went to Samson. Weeping, she said, "You say you love me, yet you haven't even told me the answer." Day after day she kept pressing him, until Samson could bear it no longer. On the 7th and final day she revealed the secret to the Philistines. Before sunset the men came to Samson and said, "We know what is sweeter than honey and stronger than a lion." Samson looked at them and replied, "If you had not manipulated my bride, you never would have solved my riddle." At that moment the celebration came to an end. At that moment, consumed by fury and the pain of betrayal, Samson left Timnah and went to Ashkelon. There he struck down 30 Philistine warriors. He took their garments and returned to fulfill the promise he had made. After delivering the garments, Samson returned to his father's house. Meanwhile, the woman who was to be his wife was given to the man who had been his best man during the wedding. Sometime later during the wheat harvest, Samson returned to Timnah. He brought a young goat as a gift. He believed he would finally see his wife, but what he found would change everything. The young woman's father looked at Samson and said, "I truly thought you hated her, so I gave her to your best man." Then he added, "But her younger sister is even more beautiful. Take her instead." Samson took a deep breath. Then he said, "This time no one will be able to say I was wrong. The Philistines will pay for what they have done." In those days Samson captured 300 foxes. Then he tied their tails together in pairs and placed a torch between them. Everything was ready. When night fell, Samson lit the torches and released the foxes. They ran throughout the Philistines' fields. Within moments the fire spread. The fields, the vineyards, and the olive groves were consumed. When the sun rose, the Philistines saw the destruction and soon discovered that Samson was responsible for it. Consumed by fury, they decided to take their revenge. The Philistines went to the house of the young woman, and also to the house of her father. That day they both were killed. Their revenge had gone beyond all limits. When Samson learned what had happened, he said, "Because of what you've done, I will not stop until I have my revenge." Then he attacked the Philistines, and the battle was merciless. After the battle, Samson took refuge in the cave of the rock of Etam. But the news spread quickly. Soon a great Philistine army marched against Judah. Out of fear of the Philistines' reaction, 3,000 men of Judah went to Samson. They asked him to surrender. Samson agreed, but he made only one request: "Promise that you will not kill me." The men of Judah bound Samson and handed him over to the Philistines. The moment they saw him, the Philistines shouted in victory. They believed that at last the man they had feared was defeated. But at that moment the Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson. The ropes that bound his arms snapped like threads burned by fire. Then he looked around and saw the jawbone of a donkey. Without hesitation, Samson gripped the jawbone. The Philistines charged from every direction. They believed their strength in numbers would be enough. The first soldiers attacked. Then came dozens, and soon hundreds. Yet the longer they fought, the more fear spread through the Philistine army. Then the soldiers tried to bring him down at once. All of them leaped onto Samson. For a moment it seemed that everything was over, but suddenly the ground shook. Samson rose to his feet and hurled them all aside, as if they weighed nothing at all. Realizing that Samson was unstoppable, and that neither weapon nor man could defeat him, the entire army stopped. When the dust settled, silence fell over the battlefield. 1,000 Philistines had fallen. Samson still held the jawbone. Then he said, "With the jawbone of a donkey, one man struck down 1,000, piling them one upon another." The years passed. Samson continued to be the man the Philistines feared the most. No army could stop him, but the greatest challenge of his life would not come through strength. It would come through his heart. It was then that Samson met a woman in the valley of Sorek. Her name was Delilah. She was beautiful, intelligent, and she captured the heart of the man who had never been defeated in battle. Samson spent several months with Delilah, but his reputation continued to terrify the Philistines. They knew that no soldier would ever be able to defeat him, so they decided to use another weapon, their cunning, and they went to Delilah. The rulers of the Philistines said, "Find out where Samson's strength comes from, and how we can overpower him. In return, each one of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver." Tempted by the enormous reward of silver, she accepted. That same night, Delilah looked at Samson and asked, "Tell me, what is the secret of your strength? How could someone defeat you?" Samson smiled and replied, "If they tie me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have never been dried, then I will become as weak as any other man." But it was nothing more than a lie. The following night, Delilah did exactly as Samson had said. While he slept, she bound him with 7 fresh bowstrings. Without Samson knowing, Philistine men were waiting hidden inside the house. Then Delilah shouted, "Samson, the Philistines are here!" In that instant, Samson awoke and snapped the bowstrings as if they were nothing more than strands of linen. The men in hiding stood frozen. But Delilah did not give up. Over the next few days, she tried again and again. Samson always gave a different answer, and every single one was a lie. With each attempt, the Philistines failed, but Delilah kept pressing him. Samson never once suspected Delilah. Delilah had tried everything. Then she came to him weeping and said, "How can you say you love me when you hide from me your greatest secret?" Then Samson looked into Delilah's eyes and replied, "Never has a razor touched my head. From my mother's womb I have been set apart for God. If someone shaves my 7 braids, my strength will leave me, and I will become like any other man." At that moment, Delilah knew that Samson had told the truth. That same night, Delilah sent for the rulers of the Philistines and said, "Come one more time, now he has told me the whole truth." Then Delilah called for a man. While Samson slept with his head in her lap, his 7 braids were cut off. At that moment, his strength began to leave him. Then Delilah shouted, "Samson, the Philistines are coming for you." Samson awoke, thinking he would face them as he had every other time, but the Spirit of the Lord had already departed from him. The Philistines advanced, and for the first time Samson could not resist. They captured him and led him away as a prisoner. The man who once made armies flee was now being led away in chains. Then the Philistines gouged out his eyes and took him to Gaza. There Samson was bound with bronze chains and was forced to turn the millstone like a common slave. It seemed that everything was over. The strongest man in Israel now lived in darkness. But there was one detail the Philistines had overlooked. As the days passed, Samson's hair began to grow once again. Sometime later, the rulers of the Philistines held a great celebration. They believed that Dagon, their god, had defeated Samson. Inside the temple, thousands of people were singing, eating, and celebrating. Then someone said, "Bring Samson. We want to see him again." Then Samson was brought from the prison in chains. Blind and humiliated, the crowd laughed, mocked him, and celebrated the fall of the man who had once made the entire Philistine army tremble. Then a young boy was sent to guide Samson, and he said, "Lead me to the pillars on which the temple stands. I only want to rest against them." Then Samson prayed to the Lord and said, "O Lord, remember me. Give me strength just one last time." Then Samson planted his feet, pressed his hands against the pillars, took a deep breath, and pushed with all his strength one last time, willing to sacrifice his own life to accomplish it. Then with one final effort, Samson pushed the pillars and the temple collapsed. On that day, Samson brought down more enemies in his death than he had throughout his entire life. When the dust settled, the temple was gone, and so Samson fulfilled his final mission and gave his own life to defeat the enemies of Israel. Later, his brothers came to retrieve his body and buried him in the tomb of his father Manoah. Samson judged Israel for 20 years. His story reminds us that the greatest strength was never in his arms, but in God. Until the next video, and may God bless you all.